Well, thank you, President Lillian and the Hult International Business School in totality for this wonderful honor. The school is a unique and dynamic organization with a really distinctive mission that emphasizes both collective effort alongside individual drive and talent, and has this special focus on making a positive impact on our communities. The school also emphasizes practical learning. After all, impact depends on what we do in the real world. And as I was preparing the short remarks that I'll give in a minute or two, I was reflecting on how those values of teamwork and of practical learning would have really helped me on my journey. Perhaps if I had some education along those lines, I would have been here on this stage 10 years earlier. But now, as a member of the Hult family, with this honor and this beautiful gown, maybe I'll be able to make a contribution as well. But let me turn to the real stars of the show today, the graduating class of 2023. I felt the energy all the way down the road as I approached Westminster. It was like a dozen of the best weddings with the most loving friends surrounding it. So I think you're all feeling pretty good about yourselves right now. And congratulations, you've done so well. You have put yourselves through a 1 or 2 year tough program, collaborated, prepared yourselves for one of the most remarkable and challenging times in human history. What I'd like to do is share some of my experience over the past 30 years or so that might be helpful in navigating the coming years, about how to think about the future, how to take risks, and how to keep learning. Now, I graduated back in 1994. It was a very different world back then. There were fewer than 5 million people on the internet. Mobile phones were incredibly scarce. TikTok wasn't taking up all of our time, and there was certainly no Chat GPT. I mean, how would we have done our assignments? You will never know. We use books. But I discovered the internet as an undergraduate a few years earlier, and I fell in love with it. And back then, it was just text on a green screen. And to be honest, there wasn't much there. I mean, really, there was nothing at all. But what there was felt magical. I used to read a web page where someone had listed the 5 or 6 best pizza places, in his opinion, near his laboratory in California, thousands of miles away from where I was. Useless, but amazing. I found chat rooms where you could type away to random people, mostly graduate students in America, about random topics. Useless, but magical. And I fell down this hole of this remarkable technology, and I had probably visited every website in the world before I reached my 3rd year at university. It's not as hard as it seemed. There are about 600 of them. It's nothing that you guys could do today. There are more than 1 billion websites worldwide. And that's the point. In the decades since I graduated, the number of internet users has grown 1,000 times. It's grown exponentially. And the number of things that we can do have grown exponentially. Now, after I graduated with a decent degree from a decent university, to the point of plans, the real world came and punched me in the face. As employers chased after my friends, giving them job offers, I received rejection after rejection after rejection. 57 rejections in total. Now, if in your careers, when you're chasing a deal with a new customer or trying to get something done, you face that level of rejection, my piece of advice to you is just keep going. It's hard to stop someone who won't stop. Now, most of my peers settled into their graduate trainee programs, and I was still at home with my parents. And finally, I managed to get a few days' work at the Guardian newspaper, helping them with an event they were running. The team needed an extra hand to lift boxes, set up computers, and take exhibits down, exactly what a 4-year degree trains you for. When that 3 days ended, I just kept going into the office. Nobody had told me not to. And thankfully, swipe cards hadn't been invented. You just needed a nice smile, and you could get past the guards. And I would sneak back to my old temporary desk. It was really terrifying. You've heard of imposter syndrome. I didn't have imposter syndrome. I was actually an imposter. And after a few nerve-wracking days, a very kind editor asked me to proofread an article. I did that, and then I stayed 2 years. I ended up editing a section of the paper within 6 months. But I couldn't get the internet out of my head, and so like a fire starter or troublemaker, I persuaded my bosses to try to get some part of the newspaper on the web. Apart from the Daily Telegraph, no British newspaper had a website at the time. Not the BBC. I would launch that a couple of years later. Not ITV, not Sky, not The Times, not even the Daily Mail. So I persuaded my bosses to put this part of the newspaper online. And with a friend, because we had no budget and no resources, we wrote both the software code for the site and the stories that we would publish. And we launched it back in 1995, and we were incredibly nervous about whether we'd be able to cope with the demand of all these people wanting to read our articles. I mean, would we keep the physical web servers up and running? No one knew anything at the time. The IT department had never run a web server. There was no internet cloud back then. Amazon only sold books. Google hadn't been founded. Microsoft was trying to compete with the internet, not build things on it. And websites would just crash, sometimes for hours. So it was down to me and my buddy to keep these servers, housed in a basement, alive. Now that basement had an automatic fire extinguisher in it, and it would flood the small room with halon gas. That would put out any fire, but also asphyxiate any human who was in the room at the time. Now, we had these 3 web servers, and 2 of them were live, serving users. But every 20 to 30 minutes, one of them would crash, because you may remember, we had written the software for them. And I would physically remove the cable connecting that computer to the internet and plug it into the spare machine. And I would restart the machine that had crashed. And then I would reboot that machine, and 20 minutes later, machine number 2 would crash, and I would do that same little game of musical chairs. And all the while hoping there was no fire that would surely have me asphyxiated there on the spot, Ethernet cable in hand. But this hand was the Guardian's first internet load balancer. Of course, that's now been automated, and some piece of software has taken my first job. But this really gave me my first lesson, that the importance of trying something out. We just went out and we gave it a go. In the face of all this ambiguity, there was opportunity. But I also learned to start parsimoniously. We had no budget, so we had to start small and test and make mistakes and learn from them. I mean, the learning is key. Don't just make mistakes. And that's the pattern, the cadence I followed really over the last 25 years. And with my latest business, Exponential View, which analyzes that speed of technology change and what it means for business, I've done the same thing. I started parsimoniously. I bootstrapped the company, building it alongside my quite busy day job for 4 years. And little by little, as I did things, I learned, and the business grew. Testing and seeing, I would nurture its growth. Now, this took enormous amount of stamina. In some weeks, I might have flown to 4 countries in as many days for my main job. I had 200 or 300 people working for me in 4 continents. And I would often be writing my analyses on the floor of the airport terminal by the boarding gate of the plane, because it was the only time I would have. And for several years, I would wake up at 4 o'clock on Sunday morning, writing my newsletter before my family, 3 kids under the age of 10, would wake up, and of course my wife. Now today, we have a managing director who runs the business and a team as well. We have a new TV show that comes out in 2 weeks, and we're trusted by leaders of companies, communities, and countries worldwide. We've got this impact now, but we started very, very slow, very parsimoniously, and with a sense of learning from our mistakes. And we learn as fast as we can. Another of my takeaways of the last 30 years is that knowledge isn't static. It is dynamic, and it compounds. So mastering the skills of learning and self-reflection, you may remember those words from some of your courses, and applying them practically, observing and learning some more. These are the hallmarks of the curriculum you've been through the last couple of years. They are essential for a dynamic world. But in such a fast-changing world, learning alone isn't enough. You need to take some risk to move to where the world is going. In periods where change is slow, you can stay where everyone else is. But when the speed of technology or business or life is accelerating, to stay still is to fall behind. In Lewis Carroll's book, Alice Through the Looking Glass, the Red Queen makes a point. She says, in this world, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to go somewhere else, you must run at least twice as fast as that. Now, I would say running twice as fast as everyone else sounds really, really exhausting. But there is a better strategy, and that is to figure out how the world is changing. What are the trends that matter? It's about looking forward, not just linearly, but exponentially, and then working out, little by little, how to make sure you're pointing in the right direction. Today's exponentials, like the internet, are to be found in every aspect of business. When I graduated, there was only the internet, but now you have electric cars, solar power. They're exponential technologies becoming ubiquitous. Even the squishy stuff of life, biology, the genes that make us up, the foods we eat, the materials we use, are benefiting from exponential technologies like gene editing, synthetic biology, and protein engineering. The handful of artificial meats and biologically grown products will become a torrent in the next few years. And if you look at the potential of artificial intelligence, these systems are getting, here's the word again, exponentially better. They have the potential to shatter existing industries and create new ones for the next generation of leaders, which is all of you. As I sat as a young graduate with that one thrilling exponential, the internet, it was very ambiguous. We didn't know what it would hold, what it would bring. It's very uncertain. It took 20 years for people to really understand what it's about. And for each of you, you face a similar opportunity, but not just with one, with several. So many ways to rethink food or fashion, travel or technology, security or sustainability, consulting or climate. And to do that, we collectively will need the imagination that you have. So I'll leave you with 3 small pieces of advice. In a fast-changing world, figure out as best you can where it's going, not where it has come from, and see if you can run with that trend. The second is that in the face of uncertainty, take risks. Not a huge cavalier risk, but take many small bets which allow you to build experience. And always, always be learning. Mistakes are part of life, they're part of learning, they are part of progress. But just make sure you keep making new ones. Thank you very much.